Hey all, I'm here to talk about the reflection paper a little bit, as there's some confusion about it. The reflection paper is essentially a cause and effect paper. So the first part of it, you may have noticed, is identical to the narration paper, but you must use a different topic, so it can't be the same thing. But essentially, it's not just a narration paper. It's really a cause and effect paper, where you're telling me about something that's happened to you, and you're showing me how it affected you. The first paper, the narration paper, the requirements were you have to tell me about something that's happened to you. And really, that's it. This paper is really more about the cause and the effect, so showing what's happened and its effect on you. I want you guys to really focus on showing, though. If you remember in class, I talked about mechanical versus organic reflections. Mechanical reflections, there'll be basically two different sections. There'll be this happened to me section, and there'll be this is how it affected me section. Whereas organics, it will just read like a story. But once you look back at the story, you'll be able to see both what has happened to them and its effect on them. Let me give you an example. I wish I had a physical copy of this story, but I don't, so I'll have to just tell you about it. The best example of this story was a paper submitted like 15 years ago called Fat City. Um, Fat City told the story of a girl named Maggie. And the story opens up with the girl coming home and her mom asking her, Maggie, are you having another slice of pizza? Fat City. A lot of the story is stream of consciousness where it goes into the character's mind. So after her mom says that to her, Maggie thinks, or after the disembodied voice of her mom says that to her, Maggie thinks, yes, I had 3 slices of Cosmos pizza, 3 big, beautiful slices. And then she thinks, pig, fat slob. So then Maggie goes to her room and she sits on her chaise lounge and she looks at this picture of her and her boyfriend. And then she throws the picture against the wall, smashing it, saying that, thinking that she doesn't understand how he could stand to be with such a fat whale. All right. So then she starts looking at these magazines, 17 magazines, starts looking at these, beautiful, thin girls with guys hanging all over them. So then she begins to like reach down under her bed and she has like a package of like Oreos. So then she starts, eating the Oreos, binging the Oreos. As she starts to eat the Oreos, she thinks her diet had been going so well too. She hadn't eaten anything since yesterday at lunch, right? So the story continues. She's eating the Oreos. Soon she runs out of Oreos. She looks around, for other food, for candy corns or gummy bears. Doesn't find anything. So then she goes to the bathroom. She looks at the mirror. She sees herself in the mirror, and when she looks at herself, she says that her face is so fat that she can barely see her eyes anymore. That her legs are so fat that they're beginning to bust out of her. What she says, size 3-4 Calvins. That she's so fat that her legs are like ripping out of her, like size 3-4 Calvins. It says that and then basically expresses that she also weighs about 120 pounds. So she takes her size 3-4 Calvins and 120 pound self to the bathroom that her and her brother shares, and then it says that she puts her finger as far down her throat as it would go. Now, never in this story does it mention the word anorexia. Never does it mention bulimia. Never does it really say any of those types of things. All it does is it really shows this story of a girl coming home. You hear these disembodied voices of her mom. Hey Maggie, is that your third slice of pizza? Another voice of her mom says, Hey Maggie, your friend Dina has such a cute figure. She must have the appetite of a bird. Right? So you have these disembodied voices of her mom. She comes in. She basically just sits on her chaise lounge and eats some, Oreos, goes to the bathroom, looks in the mirror, and then, forces herself to throw up, right? The words binging, purging are never listened to. Anorexia is never mentioned. Bulimia is never mentioned for anorexia. But we can see clearly, thinking about the story, that essentially what has happened is that really the pressure that's been put on her by her mom, these disembodied voices, and really this standard of society, evidenced in the magazine that she's looking at the young, beautiful, girls with the guys hanging all over them. That basically these things, her mom's words, the image and what standard is in society, these things have led her to become anorexic and bulimic. But she never says the words anorexia. She says essentially, my diet had been going so well too. I hadn't eaten anything since yesterday at lunch. Well, that's not a diet, right? If you hadn't eaten anything since yesterday at lunch, that's starvation. You're starving yourself. Also, she says she doesn't say bulimia. She says at the end of the story, she goes and she puts her finger as far down the throat as it would go, is what she says. But we see that she's just binged. She's eating these Oreo cookies, this package of Oreo. She's looking around for other food. She looks in the mirror. She has this body dysmorphia that people with anorexia and bulimia sometimes, have body dysmorphia, where you start to see yourself other than you actually are. So she looks in the image of herself and she sees her eyes. She can barely see her eyes. Her face is so fat. She can barely her fat on her legs is busting out of her jeans. But we see also in that her jeans are very small, that she's actually very small. So we see that this is a warped body image as opposed to anything actually like actual physical thing. This is a mental thing. So essentially what this paper has done is or what the story does essentially, is it shows us the story of a girl. And it shows us basically the things that have caused her to become anorexic and bulimic. But it doesn't tell us anything. It just gives us this scene, this moment. We hear these disembodied voices. We hear her thoughts. We see her, binging and purging. We see her, and that's really it. We see her thoughts about the previous day. But from that, we see what's happened to her and its effect on her. So I hope that makes it a little bit more clear. Essentially, when you guys think about this essay, what you want to think of is, think about a way that you are and think about what has caused you to become that way. What has caused you to be that way? And if you were to basically show the story of that cause, and also not just in the story where the cause ends, but also show yourself being changed by it, that's essentially what you're trying to do. You're going to try to show what's happened and also show how it's changed or affected you. It has to be a different topic than the first one. If there are any questions, I'll just send me an email. I'm checking those more frequently. Hey, hope you guys are safe. Take care.